Hello, welcome back to another video. This time we're doing a meta report. Obviously, we are about to head into the play-ins, and it's going to be interesting because the same meta is obviously going to be in for play-ins and the playoffs. It doesn't seem like we have a major patch coming through for the playoffs, so what we see is what we get, really, for the most part. And we're going to try and work out what is going to be played, what to expect. But if I'm going to be straight up honest with you guys, I have no idea. I really don't have a great idea of what everyone is going to move to, and I think it's because of a lot of different moving parts. So, first of all, let's talk about the Countdown Cup. So we're going into the play-ins, and the Countdown Cup just happened. Obviously, the meta was pretty defined. Towards the end there, it was a little diverse, but for the most part, once we got towards the end, like, obviously, I think this has Countdown Cup. We were playing a lot of this Wrecking Ball Diva kind of style. There was a little bit of adaptation. There was a little bit of different plays, but for the most part, that's around where we stayed. So the question becomes, where are we going to keep going? Because during the Summer Showdown, which was the tournament before the Countdown Cup, the last time we don't have hero pools, because in the playoffs, there are no hero pools. There's no going to be any more hero pools for the rest of the tournament, for the rest of the season, so the playoffs is all going to be the same thing. And the play-ins is really going to be the litmus test for what is going to be played in these tournaments. So if we go back down to the Summer Showdown, or when we last didn't have hero pools, let's go to the playoffs and not the qualifiers. So this shows the league usage of just the playoffs, so towards the end of the Summer Showdown, what was being played. And if we cast our minds backwards, we played a lot of dive. So honestly, not a whole lot different to what we were playing in the Countdown Cup. So maybe the effects of not having Echo, Ashe, Lucio, Sigma aren't going to be noticed as much as we would generally think. So are we going to stick with the Lucio, the Tracer Sombra Wrecking Ball? Most likely. And I think a lot of us can agree that's probably where we're going to end up. There was a little bit of double shield getting some traction from time to time, but for the most part, teams were starting to move away from it in the tournament. But with the addition of Lucio, something that we did see in the Summer Showdown was a lot of Lucio Symmetra play with like a brawl. Not really from the East. We saw it from a couple of the teams in the East, like your Philadelphia Fusions, if I remember correctly. But for the most part, it was the West that was trying to make these brawl comps work. Like, think back to Hanamura, where you just TP to the first point, same thing on second point. You can make it work on a lot of different maps and sort of catch the opposition off guard. But if we learn anything from the Summer Showdown and the way that it played out through the entirety, it's not a consistent thing that will work and get you across the line all the way, right? And the finals were Shanghai versus Chengdu. Shanghai was just way better than everyone playing that Wrecking Ball composition. There was also the Pharaoh was working as well. So I'm a little concerned that we might not see a lot of diversity, but as I said, we're going into play-ins, and the litmus test means I think a lot of teams are just going to play to their strengths. So there are only 4 matches in the West, I believe, and 2 matches in the East to determine who is going to be in the official playoffs. So this weekend coming up, there are not many matches, and I think there is not going to be enough time for the dust to settle on what meta is the best. So I think you'll see a lot of teams coming out and just playing what they're good at. So in the West, obviously we got your like Washington Justices, which are more likely to play towards that Wrecking Ball, but have they worked it out, right? We've all counted with Mag. We've all seen how poor the Washington Justice have done when they play these dive comps. Are they going to be able to work it out because they do have the talent on their roster? The Houston Outlaws is quite a good dive team, and they've shown us that they can't do it, but they've also shown a willingness to play a lot of this shields and Symmetra situations as well in the past. So is Houston going to try and slow it down, or are they going to mirror the dive? It's pretty cut and dry what's going to happen in the East for the teams at the top, when your Chengdu's, your Shanghai Dragons, but I think in the East play-ins, we have the Seoul Dynasty, the Philadelphia Fusion, and the Hangzhou Spark, if I'm remembering correctly. So am I missing a team? I'm missing a team. Who are we missing in the East as well? Am I missing someone? Who am I forgetting? Is it the only 3? I got them all. Okay. So we got all 3. And I think the important thing to note about all 3 of those teams is that they play a very different style. The Hangzhou Spark have shown a willingness to play dive, but it made me want to gouge my eyes out. So hopefully they look at that and they go, that's not going to be our strengths. Let's play towards something that is better for us. Like maybe they move shy towards hit scan again, right? When the Spark have looked the best, they've played that hit scan. Is it going to be in their best interest to play the Ashe now that it's unlocked? Even though it might not be the best choice overall for a lot of these other teams, but they could make it work. Go back towards those double shields, slow it down, pocket shy, potentially win the game. Seoul Dynasty, they look good in dive sometimes, but, you know, their Tracer Sombra, it isn't the cleanest thing we've seen. If they can get Gesture and slow it down, maybe they could play a slow comp. And Philly is kind of like the West Eastern team, if you know what I mean. Like, they play a lot of the Mei Symmetra stuff. They are willing to play the Brawl and want to play with that Lucio, especially now that Funny Astro is back in the lineup. So is the Philadelphia Fusion going to go more towards this Brawl style with their Symmetra TPs and lean towards their strengths, or are they going to try and adapt and go towards what the Chengdu Hunters and the Shanghai Dragons are? That seems to be like it will be the most meta heading into these playoffs. And then that opens the door, right, of we're just talking about the play-ins. Do you play for an overall victory and become a well-rounded team, or do you just play against the opponent that you're up against for the play-ins? There are not many matches in these play-ins. Just play to win these matches, and you can come out with a cheese comp, and it can work for 2 matches. There's not a lot of turnaround between these matches, so there could easily be some wacky shit that goes on. I wouldn't be surprised if we see a lot more Mei Symmetra than we would genuinely expect going into this tournament and going into the playoffs. Because remember, there is going to be a pretty long break between the play-ins and the playoffs, so it's not like, oh, if we just practice, you know, bad comps that will win us through the play-ins, we're not going to have enough time to be able to beat everyone else. Legitimately, everyone's just gunning for the playoffs. So then we're kind of up in the air. I'm curious, I want to open up to chat. Do you guys genuinely agree with what I have to say about what we think the meta is going to be? Because that's my little spiel. That's what I expect. And I do want to sort of have a look at like some of these things that like other people were playing, right? Like we look at the Los Angeles Gladiators. They actually played a not that much Moth. So he only played 15 minutes Lucio. They weren't playing that much Moth, and they were still sticking to Skewed on the Brig. They were slowing it down. They played a lot of the Ana, Baptiste. They were playing the Winstons and that kind of stuff. That Winston dive style, is it going to work? Washington Justice, obviously a team that we will see. Are they going to go stick with what they were doing with Mag? But like, look at this. Even in the Summer Showdown, look how much Reinhardt they played. They played 1 hour of Reinhardt back here. And they played like this like Baptiste, Reinhardt with Decay on the Symmetra. Obviously that's not good for the Washington Justice. I hope that they don't revert back to that style. It is worth talking about the patch that we see. Actually, let me bring up the Overwatch patch. Overwatch patch notes, because let's have a look at it, because there is a Genji patch. And this is the first time we are going to see the Genji patch. So I believe this is the patch that we are going to play on. The Doomfist one doesn't really change much. We're not going to see Doomfist. As much as Doomfist is cool, you can make it work potentially in Temple of Anubis. It's just too greedy. It's just too hard to pick. The Genji one is increased shuriken damage from 28 to 29, and the damage from the ultimate goes from 120 to 110. I don't know if this is good enough to make Genji viable. Obviously, 1 damage apparently increases the breakpoints according to the developer message. I haven't noticed it. I haven't heard anyone talk about Genji being really good. From what I've played in Ranked, it's still quite a niche pick. So I don't think this Genji change is going to affect anything. The Moira self-healing increased a little bit. Maybe when people play Lucio Moira, it'll help, but I don't think this is going to be a defining factor. Roadhog gives less ult charge, but I don't think we're going to see Roadhog for the same reasons. It's just too hard. Maybe we'll go into the playoffs and we'll have like another crazy Roadhog patch of Roadhog, just, you know, we'll see Decay go over, play the Xayah, they'll play Roadhog, it'll work for them. I doubt it. I don't expect to see Roadhog being played again. And the Soldier 76 does get buffed a little bit with the damage. Maybe Legs gets a little bit more playtime, especially in the dive. Like we saw a lot of teams in the Countdown Cup trying to play that like Tracer Soldier, because the Soldier actually puts out a lot of damage and is very, like, can do a lot of healing to himself and can stay alive. And with the Visor not having fall off damage now, it actually works quite well in the dive. So I think you'll see a little bit of Legs, but it's not going to be meta. This is probably the biggest thing in this patch that might affect it. But this is kind of like a pseudo buff to Wrecking Ball. Grappling Claw not beginning. on cooldown after respawning, so the Wrecking Ball won't be picked as much to just fly out of spawn, and he won't be able to make it back from spawn as fast. The Adaptive Shield is just nicer. It casts instantly now, and the duration is longer. It's nice. Quality of life change. I don't think it's going to have that much of an impact. The big one that I really like is the proximity mines won't stick to walls. So they're going to they slide down walls now, and that's actually a really nice change because that gives you... I think Wrecking Balls can do a lot more with that without the fear of it just getting all stuck on the ceiling. We've all been there. We've all dropped mines on the ceiling and then been very awkward about it. So that's all the changes for this tournament. As I said, nothing game breaking. I don't think we're seeing like Hanzo from 2018, that massive change, or like Roadhog that we saw last year where Roadhog just became massively meta in the last second. For the most part, I think we're going to have a pretty stable patch in the playoffs. And I think it's actually interesting because I wouldn't be surprised if we get surprised by a unique composition that becomes very good, especially on unique maps. I think in the playoffs, it's going to be loser's pick. So I think that might have a very high effect on who is going to pick and the advantages that they're going to gain from just choosing certain maps, especially now that we have Symmetra and Brawl back on the menu. Our team's going to lean back into the Lucio, or are we just going to stick with this Ana Winston dive or like Wrecking Ball Tracer Sombra dive? It's kind of up in the air. So I'm pretty excited for this play-ins. I think we'll learn a lot from this weekend. I don't think this will be the true test. Obviously, we're not going to see the best of the best teams. We're not seeing your Shanghai Dragons. We're not seeing your Los Angeles Gladiators, Dallas Fuels. We're not really going to see what they're going to do with it. For the most part, we're going to see the weaker teams, and I think they're more likely to throw curveballs and just do whatever they can to win. So it's kind of up in the air. I haven't really given you any concrete information here, but that's because I don't think there is concrete information. We are really going into this in the dark. And it'll be interesting to see how people adapt, especially because teams are more likely to play the thing that they were most recently good at, right? So because dive was so prominent, everyone's played a lot of the dive. I think teams will generally move in that direction before they start going back to the brawl if they don't have to. So we'll see. We'll see. Paris Eternal. What are they going to play? I'm excited to see what they're going to play because I think they're the team in the West that's most likely to throw a curveball at everyone. Like, I think Toronto's going to play the dive. For the most part, they look very good. Maybe more around that Hisu Hanzo. Washington Justice, I expect them to play the ball play. It's probably their best bet. And who's the other team? We got the Houston Outlaws. So Houston Outlaws and Paris might surprise us with what they play. And the East is just a fucking toss-up. I don't know what to expect. So it is a short video. I hope you guys found it interesting. Keep it short, sweet, and simple. Let me know what you guys think. What do you guys think in the comment? Am I wrong? Is there something that I'm missing? I don't think there is, but just let me know. Thank you very much for watching. I'll see you guys soon, and I will be doing a play-ins video in the next couple of days as well, so stick around for that. I'm going to be talking about all the teams in the West and the East that are keeping and playing for their lives in the 2021 season. So thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you guys next time.